stuck between a libertarian and a Republican? Welcome to Publitarian Podcast.
And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. This is Ronald Johnson, Publitarian, coming at you again with another episode of Publitarian Podcast, and we are up to episode number 106. And I'm probably going to be calling this, All the Conspiracy Theories Are True. There is a laundry list of things to go through. Now, if you are a faithful listener of my podcast, you probably already keep up with the news cycle, so a lot of what I'm going to be getting to is old news, but breaking from a piece in Red State today. There is a Chinese defector with terabytes of information about China, their weapons program, the Wuhan virology lab, you know, that innocent civilian virology lab, Chinese weapons programs, basically a treasure trove of intelligence. The dude told he was upper up in the Chinese government, told them he was going to come over and visit his daughter in California, and then defected, called the DIA, and it's an exclusive piece in Red State talking about like all the stuff that he has. And for any of my liberal friends listening, the Daily Beast and Yahoo News is also reporting on this. I hate that I have to give liberal news sources as like bona fides, but so many people, if you give them a piece from like OAN or Breitbart or anything like that, they just automatically just, well, you know, the mainstream news isn't covering it. Sometimes the stories are so bad and so big that the news... The mainstream quote-unquote news will have to cover it, but they usually massage it or play it down or use it as some kind of weapon to attack conservatives. But the Daily Beast and Yahoo News is reporting on this. The exclusivity in the Red State piece is talking about just the information that he has and what the DIA has. What's scaring me about this is we have so many Chinese nationals influencing and in our government now. I don't know what the DIA is going to do with the information, if anything. Like, Eric Swalwell is still literally in Congress while he had a Chinese spy that he was quote-unquote associating with. Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese spy driving for her for years. We've had Chinese spies that are busted as professors in universities and scientists at universities. We've got Chinese government owning sports teams, owning farmland, owning housing, owning businesses, owning pieces of newspapers. We've got John Cena, Mr. Marine, like apologizing in Mandarin for disrespecting the Chinese government. So I honestly don't know what the DIA will do with the information, but the guy is trying to defect, and so we'll see what becomes of it. I don't know if much news is going to be made of it besides just the quick little mention in the mainstream news outlets, so they can kind of play and be like, oh no, we talked about it, and then, you know, quickly move on to the next subject. But the reason I wanted to call the podcast All the Conspiracy Theories Were True is because former President Donald Trump, at the beginning when the whole like coronavirus thing started, he was like, hey, you know, I've talked with intelligence. This is more than likely coming from a lab. The bat thing, I don't think is the case. And then Fauci's like, oh no, it has consistency. It has consistencies of animal to human variants and contacts and all that stuff. And now Fauci is doing damage control on all of the news outlets, going, no, I always said you should question. No, there's no sound clip of him saying, oh no, we should always keep an open mind. We should always question. No, their story was what the WHO and China told them to say, which was, oh, this was from a bat, this was from a wet market. We're not developing gain-of-function super viruses in a Wuhan lab. I mean, we're China. We're the most trustworthy nation in the world. Like, why would we do that? Where even hardcore liberals like Jon Stewart is going, obviously this was made in the Wuhan virology lab. It's the Wuhan virus from the Wuhan virology lab. So that's starting to drip out. The media is trying their best to cover Fauci's ass and just do what damage control they can. And so, like I said, they are slowly dripping this out. So if we ever call them out on it, they'll be like, oh no, we reported on it. I mean, like milliseconds of time. And also having Fauci on to play damage control. And it's that part's a mess. So that was one conspiracy theory that we were correct about. In voter fraud news, the Arizona Maricopa County audit is still on. The reason I think something will more than likely come out of this is because if you go into any search engine, even DuckDuckGo, which I trust more than Google, and you type in Arizona, Maricopa County election audit, or even just Arizona audit, you will get pages and pages of news sources going basically in journalism ease. There's nothing to see here. Republicans are crazy. The states are undermining the federal government, which is funny because the federal election, the election for president are actually state elections. They're not federal elections. So the states can govern the election however they want to. But they do have to follow their own laws and statutes and legislature. And that was one of the problems with the 2020 election. Just coincidentally, all of the states that Biden needed to win were the ones that had the problems with following their chain of custody and what the legislatures said that the votes should be, how they should be counted, how they should be handled, who counts them, yada, yada, yada. All that was thrown out the window. But anyway, I'm relitigating that. Anyway, usually if the media is like screaming at the top of their lungs that there's nothing to see here, and how dare you talk about this, and this is an attack on our democracy, yada, 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 that usually means that you're over the target. So I would just encourage people that are doing that audit just to stay the course and keep going, because I think big news is going to come out about that. The other conspiracy theory was that there was some kind of chain of custody on these ballots, which in my podcast right after the election, I said just sounded like, even I said that sounded like conspiracy theory talk. Well, it turns out, at least in the Georgia ballots, there is some kind of, Vernon Jones, the Democrat that has switched now to Republican, says that he has seen these ballots that have the watermarks on them. Now, he's the only one talking about that. I mean, I don't know why he would lie about that, but all he did was just put up a picture on his social media of him holding up the ballot with like a watermark on it and him saying something like, interesting. But that's all he alluded to. But now there's news stories coming out about how these ballots in Georgia have numbers on them that got recorded that are not in the system, or vice versa, that they had a number on them and then they didn't make it through the chain of custody. So that's what's happening in Georgia. Again, this was a conspiracy theory that there was nothing to see here, and this was the most secure election in history, and you're a voter suppressive racist if you're questioning it. And the Occam's razor point is, if there's nothing to see, why are you pushing back so hard against us seeing it? They even got the AG Merrick Garland involved now. And he's going like, oh, we're going to have to step in and provide some scrutiny and yada, yada, yada. Excuse me, no, this is a state election. You should not be stepping in and doing this. I mean, this is me being silly and saying, the federal government should not be overstepping their bounds, but they've been doing that for, the last century. So, why would they stop now? Anyway, I went off on a rabbit trail about other conspiracy theories, but back to the the virus, the coronavirus. There was indeed a gain-of-function protein attached to this virus. It's in documents. There was a guy, Dr. Jarek, on MSNBC, actually, bragging about it. There's clips of him bragging about it, how they've conducted this research. All the while, Fauci is before Rand Paul going, oh, we didn't do this. And then he put his little caveat at the end. But if we did, it's fine. So basically what happened here is the United States, there's now a paper trail with the United States funding this gain-of-function research, either vicariously or directly to the Wuhan Institute. So America paying for, coronavirus breeding, basically. Again, that was a conspiracy theory. Now there's a paper trail to that. The thing about the coronavirus, here's my theory, what started the whole thing. I do think China was doing the research. Yes, I do think they were planning on having something they could weaponize, because there was also a patent that was being made for a vaccine for coronavirus while they were researching this. We now have video evidence of bats being in cages from 2017 in this lab. Like I said, this is all stuff you can find. This isn't just like tinfoil hat stuff. If you go on the internet and look for this stuff, you will see it. And it's from reputable news sources. But the thing is, I think they just fucked up. I think they were working on this virus and somebody fucked up and walked out with it on them. And shaboom, spread after that. There's also evidence of a few scientists being sick way back in either before or right at November of 2019 with this, Chinese scientists in Wuhan. So that has nothing to do with the conspiracy theory. That is just my own personal theory that I think happened. I think, yes, they were developing this to weaponize it, but they fucked up and it got out. And actually, former President Trump was talking about this on... it may have been Sean Hannity or something, one of the interviews he was doing, and he was like, I think somebody was just incompetent. And I was like, hey, cool, somebody's got the same theory that I do, because nobody's really talked that much about that. They're more into the nefarious things of China, which they should be, because China is trying to, basically destroy Western society in the United States. That's not hyperbole. But I was like, hey, somebody else has the same theory that I do, so I thought that was cool. Let's see, what else do I have on my list here? So anyway, the stuff that we were told were conspiracy theories are now coming to light, and they are being shown true. And so my friends on the left, I'm always like, how many more theories do we have to prove before you start believing it? Or are you so indoctrinated that you're not going to? Remember, we were conspiracy theorists when we talked about a sex cult. We were conspiracy theorists when we talked about Epstein. We were conspiracy theorists when we were talking about child sex trafficking across the border. We were conspiracy theorists when we were talking about human hybrids being bred in China. Big human hybrids being born. and that's real too. Like I said, from real news sources. I mean, even not Yahoo, but there was a main one that was reporting the human hybrid story out of China. So... again, that doesn't make all conspiracy theories correct. I'm not talking about, lizard people or, the Illuminati wanting to rule us. I'm just talking about, these are a lot of things now that have been proven true. And what's the final one that I wanted to talk about? UFOs. We've now got the Pentagon admitting that there's UFOs. And it's got people scattered in a bunch of different directions going... why are they telling us this now? Is there some other big shoe going to drop that they actually need to use UFOs as a cover? Or do we really have, aliens out there among us? Or are they interdimensional space demons coming to converse with us? But anyway, that is this episode. All the conspiracy theories that you have been believing or telling people are true, it turns out they're all coming true, and they're just being slowly leaked and dripped and drabbed through the media. And it's crazy. My next episode, I think I'm just going to do an episode of Clown World and just talk about... I'll try to keep it humorous, even though I'm talking about the destruction of Western society. But I think my Clown World episode is coming next. It's just, we are living in honk times right now. Anyway, I think that will do it for this edition of Publitarian Podcast. In conservatee news, honestly, I can take or leave Charlie Kirk. Sometimes the podcast is good. Sometimes it just, drones on. And I still have like that rebellion in me. He's a little bit too, buttoned down for me, but it seems that conservatives and liberals are starting to find some common ground in this whole, liberals want to call it income inequality thing. I think that's a farce and a fallacy. And the disconnection between liberal and conservative, or even like boomer and millennial, is boomers go, well, I did this, you can do it. And millennials and Gen Zs are going, we can't do this. Like, we cannot do this. We cannot do what you did. Things have changed. Things cost more than they used to. Our dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. And that's where the disconnect is. The two aren't talking to each other. What's funny is I said I was going to end the podcast, and here I go again on another rabbit trail. But anyway, that's me. So I think we're going to finally start to get some common ground, because Charlie Kirk was actually talking about this, and it blew me away. Speaking of which, I think Charlie Kirk is trying to sound like Rush Limbaugh. Listen to last couple episodes of his podcast. He has the cadence of Rush Limbaugh now, and he's being very deliberate, and his cadence, his pausings, where he's putting his periods and his emphasis is starting to sound like the great late great Rush Limbaugh. Anyway, that's just a side note. But anyway, Charlie Kirk was even talking about this, and I'm like, oh my God, have conservatives finally awakened to this? And I think they have. And what I'm talking about is, yes, there is definitely a problem. The bootstraps theory. You can just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it. The part that's sad about it is, yes, you can still kill yourself and do good in this country, but you have to kill yourself to do good in this country. I mean, like, work like 80 hours and like just do all this stuff that our human body, I don't think, was like designed to mentally, emotionally, and physically handle for long. And I think that's where the disconnect between the boomer and the like millennial Gen Z class is because the boomers don't understand. They're like, well, I just busted my ass and now I have money. If you bust your ass, you'll have money too. Yes, that's true. If you bust your ass, you'll have money. But to take Gen Z and millennial side, some people don't want to do that. Some people just want to like work a regular job and not have to live, in poverty. I know that's groundbreaking for a lot of conservative minds, but there is middle ground there. Just because somebody wants to work 40 hours instead of 80 doesn't mean they're lazy. They may have other life priorities. They may have like family to get home to, family to take care of, other things that are important in their life besides their job. Like if you look around the world, like other cultures, like Australia and all the, mandatory, not mandatory, but like the work gives it to you, like vacation time and yada yada. Oh my God, Ronald's talking about other countries and social programs. He's become a liberal. No, I'm just giving an example here. Just hear me out on this. It's just the work is valued differently here than it is in other parts of the country. I'm not saying that's better or worse. But what I'm saying is I think there is a middle ground. I know that's a dirty word now. It's got to be some middle ground between bust your ass 100 hours a week and then you can maybe have a decent retirement if you live long enough, between I just think the government needs to take care of me. Call me crazy, but I think there needs to be some middle ground between that. And again, I rabbit trailed, but I said all that to say, when I was hearing Charlie Kirk actually talk about this on his podcast, and I'm like, oh my gosh, conservatives have finally woken up to this. You've got big corporations coming in and buying up housing, inflating the housing market, making it look like the housing market is really hot when it's really not. Except in places like Florida, where people really are moving, down here and buying up houses. But And Charlie Kirk was talking about that, and I couldn't believe it, but he even said, we've been propping up corporations for years, thinking like they had our best interests at heart, and we wanted to just, make sure that, this guy started a corporation and became a billionaire. You can do it too. And now they have finally learned that the corporations do not share our values. Like, they're not even close. What's taught in the classroom yesterday will be in the boardroom today. So all of these wokeitarians have graduated and got business degrees, and now they're in the boards of all these corporations. And the corporations are now in league with big government. And now where does that leave us? And so I'm glad the conservatives are finally waking up to this and seeing the problem. And I wouldn't go as far to say the American dream is dead, but it is certainly dying. It's on life support. Yes, you can still achieve it, but damn, man, you will have to kill yourself to do it. And I don't think people are willing to do it anymore. The bad part about that is I think that the younger generation is still going to want more government intervention to fix it, even though government was the big portion of the problem. I mean, big corporations, big money, big anything, as I preach about on my podcast, is a problem. Big anything is a problem. You want your power as localized as possible with anything, politics, business, whatever. So that's the part that scares me. I think the boomer class or the right will continue just to ignore it and be like, well, they're just lazy. And then the other side will be like, let's vote in more socialists so they can equal everything out. That's the part that scares me. So I hope we don't go down that route. And on that cheery note, I think that will do it for me on this edition of Publitarian Podcast. If you want to reach out to me, you can. I'm Publitarian at protonmail.com. I'm on all the social medias, and I'm still hanging in on Instagram and having a good time there, still making my memes. And that will do it for me on this edition of Publitarian Podcast, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening to all my rambling.